Hello, welcome to another Eagle 6 video, and on this one we're going to be doing a full build on a Mark 46. So this is just the, obviously we need to get into the gearbox to obviously get the gearbox all prepped. So we're just going to be videoing the disassembly of that. Just remove the stock, get that off and out of the way. There's 2.5mm at the back. Put this one at the front here, which is 2. I'll get that off as well. Okay, so 1.5s and a 2, and that should allow us to just nudge this up. Right, so we've got some more 2.5s to come off here. So obviously it's quite important that this switch here will be held in place by obviously this bracket. Obviously all these wires are all nicely tucked neatly. Now we can take off the whole weight unit. Watch out with TM, they've got little tricks and tips on how to route certain things and just that right position from the factory. And you want to try and recreate that as much as possible. Right, so this is the screw that locates into the back of the spring guide and the gearbox. So I'm going to pop that there. Okay, so we can tuck this down now. Spin them over. So Phillips on the bottom here. Again, self-tapping, so just keep the pressure on it while you take it off. Okay, so we've got red on the right, black on the left, looping over. Don't think we'll need to, but if in doubt, just take a photograph of the wire routing to make sure you put it back in the same place. torque bit. Too big. So there's no changes on these Mark 46 anymore, obviously, unless you've got a really old one. You spot the new ones if you've got these torque screws at the bottom here. So it's a high cycle motor in here, but with the stronger magnets. So, you know, obviously it's quite a nice motor in order to be producing a decent amount of torque and produce 30,000 RPM. So yeah, it's pretty good. Obviously with the moving to the brushless though, we obviously get that efficiency from the brushless technology, the instantaneous response, and obviously the ability to customize the rectifier. Not that the customer gets that ability, but technically we can adjust it. Going to straighten these out, they're just easier to put back through. Okay, so that's all removed. We've got this selector switch set here to move. this forward. Just move this up a little bit so we can get this through. Bad timing. Right, so we can put this chassis to the side. Obviously for the second hand one you probably want to clean around the charge handle areas, but other than that, if it's brand new, just put it to the side. So now we just need to separate this gearbox from the front sort of a barrel support section, you know, where obviously the hot rubber hop unit is. So we've got one screw and a pin. If I drop that, where's that gone? No. Do. No. It's directional, so just make sure you get the right way. If in doubt with TM roll pins, knock one side through, check for a knolling, knock the other side through, check for knolling. If there's none, then obviously it's a roll pin without any knolling, but in my experience there's always usually some on there. So right, wires on the side. So that's your support block at the back. If they had just made that a quick release, we'd have been able to get access to this and do a quick change spring. Technically can, like right now you could obviously change the spring out if you wanted to. So if it's just a spring you're looking at changing, just leave it at this, undo this part, spring out, new spring in, and away you go. Obviously we're doing the bushings because these are known to fail, so you know, could argue that with all guns, but you know, with the plastic bushings, you know, and the amount of shots that these guns fire, you know, from customers, yeah, they can, customers can get through them pretty quick. So we just need a really small Phillips on here just to remove the wire guide. Okay, so red underneath, black on top. That's your motor wires, which goes in this little clip here, and then obviously we've got these wires over here, which are underneath that. So that removes that, and then we can put this MOSFET system to the side. So let's remove this at the back. So if you just wanted to remove just the original spring, obviously you could just do that, stick an Eagle6 one in there and you got an instant bump in FPS. Especially if you combine it with about 3 spacers. Okay, so torque screws, 1, 2, 4 and 5. So this one is a bit shorter, so just remember that one. Again, the same as any other gearbox, if you want to obviously retain your shimming, take this part off with care. Okay, so obviously proprietary anti-reversal latch on the Mark 46, proprietary gear set. This is the kind of MIM gears, you know, that TM's going to be moving to going forward. Yeah, so especially in obviously sort of new ones like obviously the new Revolt, I think you'll probably find it's almost identical. So we're just gonna, I've got no shim there in the way, so we're just gonna lift this up and recover the tappet plate spring. Okay. The downside about this piston is that moving part there. It's like they made 100,000 of these and they're just ever so slightly too small. Right, there's quite a lot of grease in here, isn't there? Paperwork. Jeepers. Sorry? Adult signature record. Declared value on this one, right? Righty, bit disjointed obviously because I started the build and then we realised that on the order there wasn't any bearings. Well, obviously we're not going to change the gears and every other single part without obviously changing the bearings. So so we've obviously just had to sort of check it was out of stock of them. So I've had to order a set in and they've arrived now. So obviously we've got the bearings for the Mark 46. So we're going to get them installed because these can wear and they turn into like oval shapes and then can cause obviously the gears to fail. So so yeah, just going to install these now. So 610, 6, 5.98, 612. So once again we separate those ones. We've got no use for making a hole at 6.1. That's a slightly better fit. These have got a different QPC coating on their type, protection, so different colour than previous ones that we've got. So maybe a different material they've used and then a different coating, or don't know. But I'm always open to anytime they want to make a better product, always happy to have that. Yeah, so these are a lot closer than the previous ones, for the big ones anyway. But we're still going to have to widen it a little bit. So we need these sitting flush. It's interesting, it's sitting quite proud, but that does look like it's in. I don't think I've got another one to just compare it to. Oh, there we go, just a bit more of a push in it. It's now gone flush, that's what we want it to sit nice and flush. Just a smidge tight. Not a lot though. See, you just don't want it to be, you know, that tight. Yeah, so that's gone flush. So the problem, like I say, is if it's too tight and or you're not quite sure if it is flush, you know, that, you know, is it then obviously gripping on one side and pulling it, you know, slanted, and obviously you know, you don't want to obviously seat it in that position, because it's going to obviously grip on the axle shaft. So we want obviously them nice and flat, and obviously the only way to make sure that it is obviously if you just can drop it into the hole, you know. But obviously you don't want to obviously have it too loose, you know, and there's obviously a, you know, huge amount of play, you know. There we go. Just double checking, like I say, the other ones. A little tight, I'll probably just do a smooch on that one. There's a lot of techs that use the pressure fit method, including ourselves, if you go back long enough. So I just think that it's just been proven through, obviously, you know, if you do enough guns for a long enough period of time, to see those guns years later, there's the potential chance for, obviously, you know, the bearings to actually get loose in the holes, and obviously you don't want them spinning in the holes, because then obviously they're a harder material than the softer metal, and then obviously they'll eat the holes away, if you know what I mean. So ideally, obviously, we need, you know, these fixed in position. We used to use a red Loctite, and we found that again over time, even though this is described as a bearing lock, that would come loose and result in some you know, being loose. So then we've moved over to it was Solink King of Airsoft recommended this 638. It's like a slightly stronger compound than that there, and it's honestly, you know, there's just some tools, well, there's lots of tools for, you know, I could recommend as being just really great tools and additions for any gun tech, but this 638 has just been, you know, I mean, okay, we've not got, you know, like, you know, 10-year history with its usage and stuff, but you know, just from you know, the sort of years worth of sort of guns that we've got out there for these, and you know, the results we've had so far has just been, you know, it's just such a good bond, and what's really great about it is that it can bond, you know, the flat surfaces, yeah. So it you know, you don't sort of need a sort of gap or anything like that in order to sort of glue two pieces together. It can actually bond at such a molecular level, if you know what I mean, between, you know, two flat surfaces. It can actually hold them together. So it's just, yeah, it's yeah, really great product. Downside to, obviously, you know, the fancy Loctites is if you want the decent stuff that's in date, you do have to pay a bit of a premium for it. So we're buying it in the smaller pots now. So just that way you can sort of keep replacing it often, and make sure that obviously you get it from a reputable place, as opposed to Amazon, because you know, make sure that it's in date and not gone off. Righty, so so we checked those, but some of those were a little tight, weren't they? So we're just going to see if we can. Okay, so I think we can get these starting to bond. good. Yeah, if you can, try and rub them on the insides of the holes, not just the edges. Like I say, it will physically bond this flat surface here if you put some on the inside flat edge. Yeah, it's quite difficult as gun techs to get support, you know. It's not like we have a special support number that we can give a phone call to, you know, just to kind of get advice and help and stuff. That's why I never quite understand, if you know what I mean. Well, I get it, why some gun techs get quite defensive, but you know, it's you know, you just have to accept. I think it's a really important part of gun tech, and that you don't know everything. Be open, you know, to the possibility of obviously, you know, advice and help. You know, it's difficult because obviously, you know, customers are expecting you to be, you know, top level, premium, top of your game, and they're always obviously comparing you to other gun techs. They're always almost like trying to start fights and stuff, you know. So it's you know, like this one's better than this one. You know, I think the best thing is, like I say, to have this mentality of obviously, you know, if there's some new technology out there, try it, you know. So if there's a new method that's trending in airsoft groups, try it, you know. You know, with the exception of maybe moving over to HPA, you know, we're pretty much open to most things, you know. So and that's mostly just because so I don't want to spread us too thin as a company. So I've left trouble, you know, teching on bloody electric guns, let alone trying to do everything under the sun. And it's difficult because obviously, you know, most of our tech stuff is a result of obviously a customer or our customer, you know, coming to us, whoever that may be, and then saying, you know, I've got a problem with an airsoft gun, can I please get some help? You know, that's pretty much what it comes down to. So occasionally you get the sort of the sort of comparison customer, you know. It's like you know, this place can do this, you know, so and it's costing this, you know, can you better that, you know? I mean, I try not to get into that, if you know what I mean. So it's the main customers that I'm looking for is obviously the, you know, the trying to help people out. My gun's broken, what do I do, you know? So it's you shouldn't sort of prioritise, but sometimes you've got to triage a little bit like that. And remember, obviously we gun techs are people as well, you know. So when we get people being quite aggressive like that, you know, doing the comparison things, well, I guess I'm going to go somewhere else. We like mostly, you know, just from speaking with other gun techs, it's mostly go on then, you know. So, you know, we'll just work on the next gun, you know, because there's always going to be another gun that needs fixing. So because you know, we always need you know, help on everything, you know. Nobody out there is going to do every single gun themselves, is it? So yeah, at the moment we're mostly doing obviously the new gun builds purchased through the website, and that's just because obviously we have to have the capacity there for these new gun builds, you know, as they're ordered, because obviously ideally we'd like them done, you know, in a week or as fast as humanly possible for that person, you know, spending that large sum of cash on a gun. It doesn't always work like that, but yeah, we try anyway, and that's why we obviously have to reserve that capacity, and I can't take on hundreds of second-hand used guns, even though, you know, both are customers, you know, so coming to me saying, you know, my gun's broke, you know, really need help fixing it. On the other hand, like I say, we do need to sell the guns in the shop, you know, so this puts in a bit of a catch-22, because obviously these lights don't pay themselves, unfortunately. Yeah, we make a huge whack on these guns, even though everybody likes to criticise gun tech prices, you know, in the UK and stuff. It's, you know, it's mostly the building. You know, obviously if the building was free and the lights were free, then obviously I could certainly charge a substantial amount less, you know, but until old rip-off Britain likes to be a little bit cheaper to exist as a business, you know, we tend to have to, you know, charge quite a bit, and even then it's never quite enough. You know, by the end of this video we'll probably be sitting at sort of 5, 6, 7 hours, something like that. We're not charging for 5, 6, 7 hours work, you know, so if we, you know, we want to obviously employ 12 gun techs and just have them sat there in a row just obviously doing guns, you know, they're going to be working for 6, 7 hours, and we're not going to be able to charge for that. So as a business model, it doesn't work too well, but you know, like I say, if we can try and keep costs down, you know, we can offer a small service, but we just can't offer the scaled service, you know, so because I just don't think financially it works, not unless the business is there and the website is making, you know, huge money in the background, if you know what I mean, and which it isn't, you know, so but if you guys would all like to log on there and buy some things, you know, and then yeah, sure, you know, I'll happily subsidise the workshop, and we'll employ people, and you know, it doesn't matter if it's subsidised, because obviously the website is making so much, but until that day, yeah, until that day we're a bit stuck, you know, in that as gun tech it kind of pays more to be technically a bedroom gun tech, you know, to be working from a garage, to not have the overheads, you know, that we've got, so and that sucks that that is the case in the UK, but it is what it is. So that one's still a bit tight to press that one in there. That one again a little bit tight. And that one don't go in at all, so we've got loads to take off that one. Gone in now. Sort of, it's got a little bit of a lip to it. I just might clean inside of it. Yep, that one's gone in. There you go. So you need to be able to press them in. It doesn't matter if there's a little bit of resistance, but it does need to be pressed in, you know, not hammered. So nice and flush that time. That's good. Right, brilliant. So we've got 3 pressing in flush, so obviously now we can apply our Loctite. Okay, flush. Another big tip I'd give for gun techs is being willing to shift parts, you know. So if you get them one that's just, yes, you got access to it, but you know, it creates more problems than it's worth. I mean, for instance, the Prometheus bushings, you know, so it just, you know, the angled edge on the Prometheus bushings is like this, yeah. So so obviously the when it comes to sitting them in, they tend to sit quite proud on the flat edge like this. So obviously from a design perspective, you know, it needs to be that, yeah. So, you know, but obviously trying to liaise with, you know, Lipo as a company and their engineers and pass on that very critical information, which we've realised just through years of trial and error and fitting and stuff, that that would be a better product if that change was made. You know, you just can't get through to them. You know what I mean? So you know, you just literally have to stop using it. So and then they're sitting there thinking, well, if we've got lower sales on this. I mean, you're always going to sell some. It's a Prometheus set of bushings, and obviously, yes, it can work. You know, so of course it can. You know, you push them in there and seat them, and they're fine, and they're in there, but they just sit so proud. You know, obviously, you know, if that's the flat edge, you know, so and obviously it has a dip in there. Obviously, you know, this one's going to sit nice and flat in that edge, so it'll be nice and flush. You know, so now yes, you might need a lot of shims. You know, to stack up there, you know, so it's obviously the concept of a protruding bushing is that obviously you need less shims, but in the situations of ones where actually, you know, you do need to shim it this high, yeah, well, obviously, how are you going to remove this material? You know, you literally have to remove the bearing, the bushing, and then actually remove material from the gearbox casing in order to have them sit lower, yeah. So when obviously, you know, it just doesn't need just do a corner edge, you know. So it's just, you know, or whatever that's called in bloody CAD terms, you know. So it just, I don't know, sometimes it's just frustrating, isn't it? So it's I'd love to be able to sit and develop our own products and stuff for every single product, but who's got the money, eh? So right, these are going to dry and then we'll come back in a bit. So we're just carrying on the shimming. So yeah, basically this is the Mark 46. Sort of aware that obviously I want to try and do these videos and get content, but you know, we are a bit behind workload wise, so it's just sometimes easier to put some music on and just crack on, and I need to figure out a way of just clearing the sound, you know. Then maybe I could just sit and watch and just obviously record the footage without actual commentary, but obviously for anybody that knows me, they know it's quite hard for me to shut up and just be quiet. Okay, so we've just done a bevel test, and obviously there's a little bit of a play on top of it, just a smidge. We also had to just sand the gears a little bit just to make sure that we had a clean movement up and down on them. You want to make sure that you've got this nice bounce going up and down here, otherwise you'll never be able to get a proper shim reading. I've got some notes that just say that I've got to add 0.1 on top of it. So I think last night I was going to switch the 0.1 out for a switch a 0.2 out for a 3, so that's adding 1. But we need to measure what's already there. It's got 1.5. Got 3. A 3. So at this 1.5. We don't have a 4, so we can't go for 3 for a 4. We've got a 3, and a 1.5. So we can add just a straight 1, or we could try adding another 1.5. That might be the best option. I've got a 3 here, but that'd be swapping 1.8. You know, that'd be adding for. Yeah, we try 3. Try 3, and then run it for a bit and see what happens. So we're going to need to pop a underneath. I mean, just by holding a hand tight together, it already feels tight to turn, so clearly those are too much. I think there was a couple of 5s there. We've got a 3 and a 5, so let's try get rid of the 3, which goes straight into the 3 pot. No movement. Smidge tight, that might be too tight. too tight. So we've got 5, so we need 2 2s. A tiny little bit of bounce, but we've already obviously proven that you know, adding that extra 0.1 shim you know, obviously makes it physically not move. So you know, so it's as much as you can hear sort of this bounce, because obviously we've made that, you know, gear free moving, you know, and it's obviously hard metal here, we can hear the movement, and there is some, and obviously the concept being with perfect shimming to try and obviously remove as much bounce as possible. Because obviously, you know, you could simply remove all shims from a gearbox, you know, and obviously it would be free moving. You would have low amp, you know, and high speed, but obviously the potential for gears to be in a position where they obviously hit each other, and obviously spinning at high RPM, 30,000, 40,000 RPM, and they're physically moving like this, you know. So, and obviously it's the spinning at high speed, the vibrations, you know, obviously are happening, and then obviously the movements, you know, at high speed, you know, so that obviously are going to potentially damage gears, maybe not these indestructible adamantium ones, but you know, especially normal gears. Yeah, so that's typically why you try and make the effort, you know, to do correct shimming. So if that's you know, seemingly good, I think what we'll do is we'll just get some grease onto it, and then we'll just give it a bit of a run in, maybe with that motor, and see what it sounds like. Freaking messy, innit? you know, we want to get a little bit of the grease on the inside of the bushings. So obviously if shimming's, you know, dramatically incorrect, you know, you could potentially hear that problem in the form of sound, you know. So so what we need to do, but you can also obviously, you know, hear sound, you know, of obviously, you know, two metals rubbing against each other. So you know, we need to obviously remove as much sound as possible so that we can tell that the shimming, you know, and there's no problem sound coming from the shimming, and it's just the materials, you know, so that things are made of that create the sound. So we'll give things a nice little coat of grease. Doesn't matter, because obviously if we put too much on in this particular stage and using this method, as opposed to just putting some gears in, greasing them, and then obviously putting your MOSFET in and then going to town, obviously, you know, yes, you could splay a load of grease all over the MOSFET sensors. So but we're going to be doing all of our testing prior to installing the MOSFET, because we just do it on a basic circuit, and thus we can bed in the gears, you know, beforehand, remove any excess, and then in theory we shouldn't get any sort of splayed with that exact method and methodology being developed, you know, specifically as a result of at some point, you know, a gun coming back, you know, with some grease on some sensors, and sort of rather than sort of saying, well, sorry to hear that, if you don't mean it's you know, we'll get that fixed, and obviously going in, fixing it for the customer, handing it back, you know, I think it's really important that obviously you try and change workshop process. You know, if I was running a big company, that's what I would be doing as a manager. Obviously, I'd, you know, be taking that feedback, and you know, you try and then pass it on to, you know, to obviously improve engineers and improve staff and stuff. So it's just, you know, so you try and just try and do that myself. You know, obviously build it into the policy here, so that it certainly becomes the new method. That way, if we did ever go back to having multiple gun techs, you know, like we have in the past, then obviously, you know, you can then maintain the standards theoretically set by the business, you know. So I want to pop him on here, but we also need to get our wires through, which we might be able to do afterwards. An odd shape, this grip, but just line up the rating with obviously you know, make sure you get the direction correct. Alright, got that to that. So the problem is, and the most time consuming obviously, is you know, if a business obviously decides to do you know, reshimming. I know it sounds like, well, you know, you can, you know, surely it's non-negotiable, isn't it? Well, no, there's gun techs and businesses and stuff that do not do the reshimming, you know. You can obviously work out a certain shim, you know, so that you know, that has a success. You could write that down, and then obviously you don't have to do all this, you know, and check it each and every time. You've got a pre sort of set shim, you know, that you just stuff in a gun, and you know, it's 80%, 90%, 91%, 71% there, you know. So but suffice to say, results in a pass, you know. So however close it is to perfect, or further away from it, you know, the gun works, and thus the company can, you know, turn around that gun really quickly, and you know, into a gun tech, and get a fast turnaround, which, to be fair, it's hard to say something against, because obviously this is one of our biggest problems, is the turnaround time, and you know, if this was literally just a matter of like, oh, I'll just take this, but I need that, there, you know, per gun, you know, but you know, the only way to do that is by fitting and even then, you know, you're taking a chance on obviously that tolerances are the same, you know, because obviously sometimes they're not. For instance, obviously, you know, this gear on the last gun that I did didn't need sanding, but the gear on this one did need sanding, right? So obviously, if you don't be a tech and apply, you know, that critical thinking, you know, to that problem, you know, there and then, and you just put it in and ignore it because you're just building it up like Lego, well, you know, you're going to get problems, aren't you? So that, or obviously the problem goes through the quality control process, and you know, because the gun works, and then the customer gets obviously a, you know, a shit product. So alright, so I'm just going to pass some wires up through. So, just going to bend these wires over. Red on red, black on black. Say it, and then that way you won't get it wrong. Oh shit, we've got to do the modifications, haven't we, on this base plate? Oh, I really need to get one 3D printed. To be fair though, this is the last of the 10 batch of Mark 46 that we bought. So yeah, 10 beautiful Mark 46 out in the world now, which is us doing our part, you know, for the Mark 46, because I think that these are beautiful guns, and you know, anyone that thinks otherwise is just blind, you know. So these are beautiful replicas of a Mark 46. You know, you stand back and just look at it from that perspective. Obviously, it feels fantastic. It looks fantastic. You know, whether you do or don't like the recoil, if you know what I mean, you just have to stand back and obviously admire what TM has obviously, you know, manufactured, you know, there. So obviously I'd love to see all the different other support guns being made, you know. Just log into Battlefield 6 and just click on support guns, you know, and just have a look at the wide variety that's on there, different ones to choose from. You know, the problem is obviously with Airsoft, you know, we do have this problem with obviously, you know, the M4 problem, you know. So the concept of you know, you buy in 15 AKs and people walk past them and then, you know, go straight for the M4. You know, yeah, those AKs are obviously perfectly good and great guns, but it does mean that obviously from a shop perspective that obviously you're constantly being left with you know, only selling, you know, certain ones. A Mark 46 was a great gun to start off with. They could have obviously done a PKM and you know, or some other support gun, if you know what I mean, and you know, maybe not quite got as good a sales, you know. So the old World War II gun or something. I still would like to see them exist, but you know, it's, yeah, it's getting them done, isn't it, you know. So and getting, you know, a gun done that obviously is going to actually sell. I mean, these are not cheap guns, so obviously a lot of people commented obviously saying, oh they'll never buy that, it's too expensive, but you know, obviously TM don't want to hear that, you know. Obviously they want to hear that obviously people love the replica and want to buy the replica, so then they'll go ahead and make some more, won't they? Right. So what we're going to look for here is obviously this base plate, and as you can see there with my wiring, it's not going flush, so that's a issue that needs resolving. So obviously we need to take out a bit of material, make sure we get our direction correct. So and then we'll remove some material here and see if we can get it sitting a bit flush up. Need a file, and we'll see if we can take that last little bit off. Yeah, you'll do. Just so if it's not clear, obviously they're modifying this so that that base plate is not being pressed, you know, it's pressing down the motor too far. Obviously with this wiring, just the nature of obviously how these are pressed on, the new motor that's been put in there, you know, these are naturally sitting just much higher. So you could try and maybe modify this wiring so that it presses on here with maybe a physically shorter connector. Maybe you can bend it down a little bit, but you know, and to be fair to this motor, obviously these are very strong connectors, but you know, also what's happened is obviously they've reinforced them with extra solder, which means obviously this won't go all the way down onto them, because obviously all this bottom section here is all solder. So I suppose you could open it up and then try and squeeze it on more, but then is it going to be loose and then obviously come off? I don't know. I mean, there's always multiple ways to skin a particular cat, but I find just taking a little bit of making a bit of a gap here for the wires to route through. Just take that pressure off. So we've just gone at it with a Dremel, so we're just cleaning up these surfaces. You know, we send our work out into the public domain, so you know, even though it's just mostly cosmetic, you know, we just clean things up and try and make it look a bit neater. test fit this because obviously might have gone too not enough. Sorry, I'm gonna have to go back at it with the Dremel again. No point hand filing if we're not there yet. Angle these down a bit. Bit more, I'd imagine. It's looking good now, isn't it? Such a fine line between obviously too far in, too far out. You know, that's just, you know, I mean, luckily obviously we've got this amazing situation here where we can view all this. You know, obviously a lot of guns, you know, you're having to stare all the way through and try and, you know, envision it from the top of a you know, a gearbox, something like a PSG1, you know, or a MP5, you know, incredibly you know, ASG Scorpion, incredibly difficult guns to try and shim up. You know, yeah, obviously the expectation is obviously you know, as good a shimming as this situation right here. You know, I mean, it just makes it so much easier when you get this inspection hole, and obviously a grip that doesn't, you know, obviously completely obscure that. Yeah, it's just, I mean obviously that sounds, you know, quiet and fine, so obviously we'll just bed it in for a bit. You know, these checks are what we call our quality control process, or our 4-point quality control process. We're basically at 4 stages. You know, we're doing checks on the gun to just make sure that obviously the build is in line with, you know, consistent expectations, we'll call it. There we go. So obviously we're happy with those amp readings. So that's not overly shimmed. That's nice and free moving. Yep, happy with that. So now we're going to just obviously do the other gears, which obviously then frees us up to finally do the rebuild process. Obviously things start getting exponentially quick at that stage, because obviously we've got over this sort of hurdle of this unknown, you know, situation of you know, shimming. Because it is, you just don't know at what particular point. It's like, well, when you're going to cross the finish line? Well, when I figure it out, yeah. So yeah, it's but now obviously we're, you know, got the bevel done. That's one. Just need to do 2 others.
So I mean, it does freely move up and down, but obviously when a key comes out gripped in like that, you know, it does indicate that there is a smidge of you know, gripping on it. But obviously I bet when we bed this in with a run test, that'll take off that that edge. Take off the top. So not so much sanding the surfaces, but obviously if there is any sort of burrs or edges, we just want to sort of just nip them off. Also, obviously, if there's any sort of Loctite inside the bushings, you know, from the initial seating, obviously we want to just get rid of that. I think that's good enough to obviously get the shimming check done. Okay, so we obviously want to check our base height against the next gear along. Oh, cool. So we've just done the amp test on here. Yeah, I mean, I probably wouldn't run it as long as this if you was using a brushed motor. Definitely wouldn't actually. So, but obviously we've got the brushless motor in there, so it's obviously running much more efficiently. So yeah, so we just each and every time I've sort of run it, you can see these progressive drops, you know, so in measurements. So it's getting easier and easier and easier and easier to turn this. Obviously, if you over shim it too much, then you know, then this reading isn't going to really go down. You just, you know, things are just going to be generating heat, and it's obviously over shimmed. But you can see how it's just breaking things in a bit, and you know, just taking off some sort of grippy edges and just smoothing things out, and just slowly but surely, just like I say, making it nice. I mean, we're pretty much almost to the you know, to the same point as the bevel only. Like I say, if it loses a smidge just because we've put some extra gears in, then that's fine. So like I say, this is a good result. Obviously we want it as low as possible, but you know, 2.57 is a really good result. Got 2.49 now. So it just keeps getting less and less. You know, we're pretty much at 3.2 now. You know, so which is yeah. Right, we'll probably just get this all built up. Probably really should video it. A little bit hot, that motor. I ran that a bit too long.
Right. Okay, so invoice, bushings. So piston, motor. Okay, we're doing a 0.3 build. Nothing specific here on FPSs, so I'm going to assume as high as possible. Let's give the customer a call.
Need to modify this anti-reverse latch to have clearance for the piston.
scratchy or anything, but
Okay, so we're pretty much just down now to getting obviously this gearbox back into the system, and then obviously we need to range test and measure the power. We could be doing all this again to bring this power back down or up, you know. So when you're putting this top section in, just make sure you pay attention to this cabling. We need to make sure that this stays flush so that it's not trapped.
Right, so one of the important parts once you've lined all the wirings up is getting this in. So once that bad boy's in, you have to make sure that the selector switch is lined up. In this particular instance, actually it looks like it is. Yay! So then what we can do is apply all the underside items. So we'll start with the grip and make sure that we put that on to obviously, and then we'll do the support things before we do the grip actually, just to make sure that the gearbox is held in the correct position. Haven't had a situation yet when these wind themselves out, so I leave the standard Loctite that's on the screw to stop these from coming out. Simply because they're obviously such a small screw, I just don't want to go down the route of you know, rounding these off when doing servicing. I'd rather the screw be missing and then we replace it, you know. Then have it obviously stuck in there. Okay. So we need the screw that goes in the back of the gearbox. Then we need the screws that locate the rear bracket. So these two locating screws effectively, you know, tell the gearbox obviously where the rear is. So now we can obviously pull the gearbox to the bracket. Wiring in. And there's a trigger guard to go in, which is trapped underneath the grip. So we need our locating screws. Again, with these ones, the Loctite that's actually on the screw is enough, unless somebody's obviously swinging the gun around by the grip. It shouldn't come loose.
a bit lucky there with the alignment. You should technically put these in first before the grip screw, just to prevent you over tightening the grip screw and pulling the gearbox this direction. We don't install a long barrel all the way through. The two-piece barrel we've tested, and we've seen no performance gains from going with a one-piece barrel, even though it seems like it would. So we much prefer to keep the ease of use of TM system here. Okay, so I just need to get a box mag on here and give this a test, and obviously if it passes the range test we can do the full build up. Obviously we don't need to put the recoil system on to do said range test, because obviously all this is just a reciprocating recoil weight. There's not part of the functionality of the actual AEG gearbox inside there, so we're going to test obviously the AEG gearbox without the extra complicatedness that is the recoil weight, and then obviously what we're looking for is it obviously operating and shooting great, and then obviously we can then finish the final build up. So we'll go and test it now. Okay, so we're just going to reassemble the recoil system and put the stock back on. We've done our range test and it's 272 on 3 ammo, which is fine. It's on 3 power spaces and our big spring, so it's about as good as that's going to get without obviously trying to try something that we never tried before, i.e. more spaces. Makes it 14 yeah, 14 under the limit, which is fine. It's within a pass mark for our builds. Obviously they've got to be within 20 ideally. So let's get all this recoil system on.
I'm using the blue just because it's going on to threads, and I don't like using much more than the blue on the threads.
The magazine's ready to stop at neutral. I'll just put 2 in. Yeah.
The position that these ones are in and what they do, it's just not worth Loctiting them. So, you know, they're not facing down gravity wise. Okay, so we've already done our range testing on this. And that means that we've done a range testing, we've done our FPS testing,
So this is now going to just rest for a little bit, then it's going to be tested on video, and hopefully now we'll be switching to the video. So thank you very much for watching if you stuck around this far and this long, but otherwise yeah, we hope you enjoyed the video. Obviously I know it's a bit you know, it is what it is. We're not doing any sort of video editing or anything, we're just, like I say, just doing the raw video. I'll just cut the footage, you know, straight from the camera, straight to the YouTube, and you get the, you know, the good and the bad, if you know what I mean. So as we're building up these things, and yeah, hopefully it's somewhat informative to those that wanted to watch it. Thank you. Hello, Richard here from Eagle6 Airsoft. We're going to be testing this Tokyo Marine Mark 46. Just to make sure that after the build we've done, that everything's operating obviously as it should. So we've upgraded the Eagle6 anti-reversal latch in this, the steel gear sets. It wasn't spec'd on here for the bushings, but we've assumed you want those, so we've obviously installed those as well, so there'll be a separate invoice for those. We've got the upgraded Eagle6 piston. We've got the Solink adjustable motor, which is obviously a very nice brushless motor. We've slightly reduced the rate of fire on that onto 33k. Obviously if you increase it yourself, that's obviously at your own risk, the speed of that. We've put a Dean's connector on there because that was on the specification. We've got the Eagle6 upgraded power spring, we've got the PSIonic hot rubber, the Eagle6 reduced size nub, so slightly smaller, to you be able to use in combination then with the standard you know, tensioner that comes in. So when we use the PSIonic small tensioner here, yeah, that's pretty much it in terms of build. I think we chronoed at 272 on 3s, so that's a nice you know, FPS there, just 14 I think under the limit. So yeah, we just want to demonstrate it working now. There we go, so I've rinsed all the ammo of that, so a good solid test there. It's one of our test mags, so it's not the one that comes with the gun, but yeah. Yeah, I'll say any problems, you know, let us know, but we hope you enjoy it. Thank you.